Hello and welcome to my channel. My name is Ash Morgan and I'm glad that you're here. I usually cover all things queer history, but today we are taking a little step in a completely different direction. And we're gonna go over the history of boob jobs. You heard that right. Boobs, titties, tatas, melons, lady lumps. Here we are. We're about to talk about them, okay? So first of all, let me just say, elephant in the room, I have not been on YouTube, I've not uploaded for the last 4 months. Yeah. You see, I did this little thing where I spent like 24 hours straight researching every single one of my videos and driving myself literally insane. And yeah, that didn't work out very well for me. Well, it did work out well for me because apparently in those 4 months when I wasn't doing anything and not even looking at my YouTube app or anything, apparently my subscribers doubled and my view count tripled and I'm already almost monetized on YouTube. Like, huh? I don't know guys, but I really appreciate you. I'm glad that you're here and I am back and going to be making some more queer history along with some cannabis history and just whatever interesting history I find interesting. And you know what? It's gonna be queer because I'm queer. So no matter what I talk about, it's queer history. In fact, I'm wanting to do tipsy lesbian history with a lot of my videos. So today is going to be a tipsy lesbian history video about boob jobs. And yes, I am drinking red wine out of a mason jar. Sue me. So I'm editing and I just realized that I said this was going to be a tipsy lesbian history, but then I got so caught up on the history that I only took that one single sip of my wine at the very beginning of the video. So it was not tipsy at all. There was no alcohol other than that one sip. I don't think that even counts. Anyway, so who am I? Who am I to be an expert on boob jobs? Well, this bitch has had a boob job herself. In fact, I had those fake saline titties inside my body for a good 5 years. So I would say if there's anybody qualified on this topic, it would be me. And can I also just say that at least last time I checked, there's literally no videos on YouTube about the history of boob jobs. I mean, I'm interested in that. I've Googled that a bunch of times. Obviously I did to research this video, but this needs to be said. People need to know. The people need to know. So at the beginning of this video, I want to go over, well, the majority of this video, I want to go through the timeline of fake titties. I want to really cement in your mind how they came to be. And then after that, I'm going to talk a little bit about my own experience with them and why I decided to take them out. So as I said, tatas. The earliest written books and spiritual texts all equate some nice, healthy, large breasts with fertility, health, and attractiveness. This is a tale as old as time, okay? In fact, one of the most famous depictions of big titties equaling health, beauty, and fertility was actually in the Book of Solomon, when he wrote that the ideal breasts are perky, full, and symmetrical. Now, people have been talking about titties, people have been writing about titties for a hot second, okay? So in the Ramayana, Sita's breasts are described as like the swelling fruit of tall leaves. And Islamic poetry in the Middle Ages frequently praises the graceful curves of women's breasts. Now, English literary giants such as Shakespeare, Chaucer, and Spenser all allude to the same ideal of curvaceousness equaling ideal, okay? Being the ideal. Now, I feel like I need to just say that not every culture has been obsessed with big titties. Ancient Romans actually viewed big titties as being comical and severely unattractive. As a general rule, they liked a slim, fit physique, okay? Ancient China also, you've heard of them binding their feet, but have you heard of them binding their breasts? Because that is a very common practice that honestly is still happening to this day in China. In fact, big breasts were thought to be the things of shrews and rural women. Refined ladies did not have the audacity to have giant titties. But other than those two, I would say that people have been obsessed with big old lady lumps for a hot second. And this is the culture that I entered into personally as a young woman. Just this intense belief that I was less than and that my boobs had just like malfunctioned by not growing to their full potential and just staying at a solid B cup. I was like, wow, nature did me a great injustice, which I have since changed my mind about because I think little titties are hot as fuck in my personal lesbian opinion. Little boobies matter. Little boobies matter, you know what I'm saying? Even in the Victorian era, when the showing of any titty was expressly forbidden, they would still cinch their waist super tight in order to make their boobs look a little bit bigger. Gotta look fertile for the men, you know what I'm saying? All comes back to the men. And then in the Edwardian period, the dresses and corsets started taking this S shape so that it would push your boobs forward and push your butt backwards. Which, I mean, hey, that is a great tactic, but obviously there was a very particular ideal. Okay, and I know what you're thinking, wow, Ash, this is so great. Thank you so much for telling me about what ancient cultures thought about boobs. Great, I want to know about boob jobs. Okay, I'm getting there. The first boob job, you could say, the first surgery involving boobs and trying to make them more attractive actually happened in the 19th century. So in 1895, a famous opera star ended up coming to this German doctor named Vincent Cerny. Something along those lines. She actually had an adenoma in her breast that she had to have taken out, and she was really stressed out about having this deformation in her boob. Hello, she was famous, she needed to be hot. So he actually ended up taking this lipoma, which if you don't know is basically a fatty benign tumor from her body, and moving it up and surgically implanting it into her breast. That was the first boob job to really ever take place. I think it was pretty successful. Honestly, I researched this a lot, trying to figure out if it actually stayed, if it went away, if it worked, or if the fat just kind of like dissipated, and I wasn't able to find anything. So we don't truly know, but there's a good chance that it might have sucked into her body and not stayed super big right there. They also did a very similar thing in the 20s and 30s. They have it today too, where you just take fat from another part of the body and then implant it into the breast. The problem with that is it actually works when you have bigger breasts. When you have already really small breasts, for some reason it just doesn't take very well usually. It might look good for a little while, but then it ends up just dissipating back into your body. And that was pretty much what was happening in the 20s and 30s. So this was a safe method, yet it just wasn't long-term effective. So that basically fell out of fashion. But winding back a little bit to 1904, people cared enough to have paraffin injections, aka a combination of petroleum jelly and olive oil, literally just injected into their boobs. Unfortunately though, this ended up in the formation of hard masses, aka known as paraffinomas, from the reaction to the foreign bodies inside of them.
Some other symptoms included but were not limited to inflammatory reactions, tissue necrosis, and draining sinus tracts. More serious complications included pulmonary embolism and blindness due to cerebral embolism. Don't try this at home.
And you know what's so scary about these paraffin injections is that they worked right away. They looked great, wonderful results. It wasn't until 5 to 10 years down the road that all the side effects started happening. Which, let me just say, that does sound a little bit similar to the boob jobs these days. I'll get into that later. See, this wasn't the end. People were like, let's try putting any substance we can possibly think of into a woman's titties. People tried polyethylene tape, which they basically wound into balls and stuck inside people's boobs. They tried glass balls, they tried ivory, they tried ground rubber, ox cartilage, and wool. All with very similar results, aka bad. Bad. A lot of these things could even lead to people's death. So, not a good option. Obviously, people are still on the hunt. They're like, we cannot handle the idea of so many women having small titties. We need everyone to think that these women are fertile, okay? We need to let all the men know that they're fertile. So of course, all these angelic male surgeons were dreaming up and thinking up ways that they could really help make a difference in women's lives. In 1945 and 1950, apparently these doctors named Dr. Morton I. Burson and Dr. Jacques Melianoc rotated the chest wall of their patients to increase the breast size. This is the only information I was able to find on this. I have zero clue what that even means. I don't know if it worked. Obviously, it wasn't that effective because it didn't continue to be done. 1945, we had a turning point where all of a sudden someone thought of the idea of silicone. They're like, this feels a bit like a titty. Maybe we could use this. And the first people to experiment with silicone in the titties were actually Japanese prostitutes during the war in 1945. Basically, these Japanese prostitutes were trying to get more customers, more clientele with the American men who were occupying Japan. And they, at the time, in the 50s-ish, Americans were pretty obsessed with that hourglass figure. They liked those big titties. And so these Japanese prostitutes were like, I want to make some money. I want to make some dough. I want to get these guys coming in. So you know what I'm gonna do? I'm gonna make myself some fake titties. They would actually steal silicone from shipments to the harbor. along with goat's milk or paraffin, and basically go to these plastic surgeons who would like black market, just like inject it into their titties for them. Yes, we're talking straight up silicone, goat's milk, or paraffin just being injected into the titties like a nice Botox. Unfortunately, in case you're curious, inserting straight silicone into the body has some terrible side effects, aka silicone rot or gangrene in the infection site, which basically would lead to either having to have your titties chopped off or embolism or death. So this did not end very well for a lot of Japanese women, which is very sad. I mean, don't even get me started on the fact that these Japanese women probably didn't even want to be prostitutes in the first place. It's unfortunate. Then in the 1950s, doctors were like, God damn, still have not figured out the answer to this burning question of how to make women's titties bigger. Let's try sponges. So they actually started surgically inserting sponges into women's breasts, which looked good at first. Seemed like a good idea at first, until they started just squeezing up into little hard balls and just being super hard and painful, and obviously not what women wanted. Some even allege that Marilyn Monroe had this done. However, many of her lovers were on record saying that she did not need any breast enhancement. She already had quite the ladies going on. Now, it's taken us a while to get here, but we're finally here. On to the first real boob job. What you think of a boob job? The first one to ever happen was in the spring of 1962 in good old Texas. Gotta make your titties as big as your hair. So a mother of 6, Timmy Jean Lindsay, ended up being the first to undergo this procedure. And you know what's interesting is she wasn't even expecting to get a boob job. She wasn't like in the market for one, looking for one. She actually was at the hospital getting a tattoo removed from her titty, which I thought was really fascinating because I was like, wow, people were getting titty tattoos back then? Kind of fun, kind of fun. Anyway, Timmy seems like a great time. She was at the hospital getting her tattoo removed, and actually one of the doctors who'd been working on this newfangled boob job procedure ended up coming to her and he was like, hey, I know you just want this tattoo removed, but would you be interested in just thinking about trying out this brand new surgery that we have? Like, we give it to you for free. And she was like, oh, you know, I'm actually more worried about like my giant ears that stick out like Dumbo. And they're like, we'll do that for you too. And she's like, sold. Okay, great. Let me go just get this experimental surgery from you for free. Sounds like a great deal. Free titties, free Dumbo-less ears, let's go. And just like that, in 2 hours, she went from a B cup to a C cup and made history. So Timmy, who is now 80, actually said, I thought they came out just perfect. They felt soft and just like real breasts. I don't think I got the full results of them until I went out in public and men on the streets would whistle at me. Good old men, loving their titties. So the pioneering geniuses behind this boob job were the surgeons Frank Giroux and Thomas Cronin. It's a funny story. It's a funny story. So basically what happened is Frank Giroux had squeezed a plastic bag full of silicone and he was like, oh, this feels a lot like titties. And then it got his brain thinking and he was like, titty. If I could get this inside of this, I could create a bigger titty. So with that spark of genius, they then decided to try it out on a poor little dog named Esmeralda. Esmeralda the dog was the first lady to ever get a boob job. Their surgical assistant, Thomas Biggs, said that I was in charge of the dog. The implant was inserted under the skin and left for a couple of weeks until she chewed out her stitches and it had to be removed. And after this, they deemed it a success and then started trying to find a human guinea pig to do this on. Now, I don't know about you, but a dog having an implant in for a couple of weeks and then taking it out, I don't feel like that is enough time to fully be able to assess any side effects or see if it's actually safe. A few weeks? I mean, remember when they were injecting shit straight into their titties and it took 5 to 10 years for them to fucking die from it? But okay, all right. It was safe. Okay, so right after surgery, Timmy Jean said, as I came back from surgery, there was just a lot of weight on my chest, like something heavy had been sitting there. That was about it. After maybe 3 or 4 days, the pain part of it had let up. Now, I just want to set the picture for what was going on in America in the 1960s. So the 50s, right before, had basically primed all of America for the whole hourglass figure. Playboy had just started printing, Marilyn Monroe was all the rage, and all these new film stars were coming out, and they were well endowed. They were voluptuous. And that's what the American ideal started to become. If you remember, back in the 20s, in the flapper era, the long, slender, small titties and very loose dresses were in vogue. It was cool to have a boyish figure. All of a sudden though, give it a few years and Marilyn Monroe was the hype. And she's a hot bitch, don't get me wrong, but it was now what all women wanted to be. In fact, there was a thing called falsies, aka stuffed bras, basically, that were really popular at the time. But so many women were starting to get to the point where they're like, shit, I can stuff my bra all I want, but as soon as the shirt comes off, it's obvious that what was in the bra is not actually in the bra. So they wanted a more permanent solution. Now, do not think that the early implants were without any side effects themselves. So hematomas, where blood collects into a swelling, was one of the biggest issues right at the beginning. There were also cases of infections and also fibrous capsular contractions, where a scar would form, making the implant hard. In case you didn't know, these are pretty much all things that still happen with implants. In the early days, there basically were only 4 choices that you could have: small, medium, large, and extra large. Now there are over 450 sizes that you can go with. So you can basically just step into a build-a-titty workshop and get whatever your heart desires. Well, then a few years later, in 1964, that's when some French scientists started coming up with the saline implants and introducing that to France. Now let's step forward a little bit into 1976. The FDA actually stepped in and started checking in on these implants and making sure that they were safe for the body and that people weren't just putting whatever the hell in people's bodies. Now if we can just leap a little further into time, in 1992, the FDA actually ended up making it illegal for people to use silicone in implants because it was not good for you. There were health concerns, they decided. They ended up being banned until 2006, and then all of a sudden the FDA just decided that it was okay. I think they apparently fixed their standards and the type of materials they would let be in it, so that it had to be surgical grade and not just anything. I don't know. Apparently all of a sudden in 2006 it was fine to put silicone in your body again. However, even with the FDA regulating this, there's still risks. People can do whatever the hell they want, really. Back in 2010, it was actually revealed that a French manufacturer, Polyimplant Prothèse, or PIP, had actually used industrial rather than surgical grade silicone to make their implants, which is very hazardous, very not good for your body. In fact, the resulting implants ended up leading to a higher risk of rupture, which, if you do recall, just injecting silicone right into the body is extremely, extremely dangerous. In fact, also perilous. You could die. And if your silicone implant were to rupture, that could cause all of the same effects, which people seem to just forget about. But anyway, the company's founder ended up going to jail, thank God. Sorry, dude. Talk about a misogynist. I'm sorry, you don't even give a shit. You just want to make money. And then in 2019, the FDA actually recalled another kind of implant, the textured gummy implants, aka the allergen biocell textured breast implants. They ended up recalling them because they were linked to a higher likelihood of developing a rare form of lymphoma. Love that. Can I please have an extra helping of cancer with my breast implants? Thank you. So now that you got all the history, let's talk about BII, or breast implant illness, which is actually why I ended up getting my implants out. BII refers to seemingly unrelated symptoms that occur after getting your implants out, which include, but are not limited to,
chronic fatigue, mental fog, hair loss, skin rashes, anxiety, depression, heart palpitations, joint pain, difficulty focusing, memory loss, vertigo, sensitivity to light and sound, night sweats, shortness of breath, irritable bowel syndrome and other gastro issues, weight gain, mood swings, low libido, choking feelings, yeast infections, visual disturbances, the development of certain autoimmune diseases,
which some patients believe are directly related to their implants. However, BII is not an official medical diagnosis. Thus, it makes it quite difficult for women to get diagnosed with it, and most doctors think that you're crazy and that it's a fictional disease, which basically leads to women not being taken serious by the medical community. What's new? Now let's look at a few celebrities who've actually had their implants removed due to BII. Stevie Nicks in 1994 attributed them to her chronic lethargy and ended up taking them out. Victoria Beckham, who spent years denying the fact that she even got a boob job, ended up getting them removed, citing that BII was the whole reason and that she basically felt like shit. Crystal Hefner, aka the wife of the late Hugh Hefner and renowned Playboy Bunny, ended up getting hers out in 2016, also referencing that it was due to BII. Yolanda Hadid, aka the mother of Bella and Gigi Hadid, ended up actually publicly getting hers removed on an episode of The Real Housewives of Beverly Hills. And it was all because of BII. A quick list of other celebrities who have also had their implants removed due to breast implant illness are Tamra Judge, who is another housewife alum, The Bachelorette, Claire Crawley, Aisha Curry, Tiffany Pollard, Stephanie Esperanza. Actually, she was supposed to get them out yesterday, but ended up getting COVID, so she will have them out in the next couple of weeks. And my Kaylani. Kaylani ended up getting theirs out a few months ago, and said that it all came down to BII. Obviously, a lot of women and people are starting to open up about this and the fact that it is negatively affecting them. And I am one of those people. If you follow me on Instagram, you probably have seen a lot of my posts about it, especially on my stories, of my whole journey getting my implants out. Just a little background on my implants and my story of them. I ended up getting them 5 years ago when I was 20 years old. I was married at the time, I was super religious, and I was living in Utah. If you know the Mormon beauty ideal, it is the platinum blonde, hair extensions, lash extensions, boob jobs, Botox. Mormon women often expect themselves to be perfect, but in this very particular Mormon perfection. That's just what the Mormon boys like. I don't know, it's what we expect from ourselves. And I had grown up my whole life feeling like there was something wrong with me for having small boobs. I hadn't even really stopped to think about the fact, first of all, that I was a lesbian until I was already married. And that oh, what is my preference? What do I think? I really based my opinions of my own breasts on what men thought of them. And I had a lot of just little comments that were very scarring to me throughout my life from men, basically praising big boobs or making little comments about my boobs being smaller or whatever, and it was really sad. Also, for the record, I was very Mormon and very modest, and so I never wore things that actually were flattering on my boobs. I basically just covered them as much as possible, so I don't feel like they even got their day in the sun, or I didn't really give them a chance to feel sexy, you know? I just felt like I looked like a little boy and that there was something wrong with me. And while in my marriage, which was not good, I ended up getting implants in, and I was proud of them at the time because I paid for them in cash with my own money that I made. And I thought that it was empowering. However, I really feel like I stored a lot of the emotions and energy that I had at that time into these implants. That sounds very woo, but yeah, I felt like I was empowering myself, but I really just didn't love myself and felt like there was something inherently wrong with me, and had for multiple years. So I ended up getting them in, and I liked them at first. Then I just slowly started getting all these symptoms. I've had massive chronic fatigue and brain fog for the last, I don't even know, 6 years. It's been unrelenting, making me almost like a shell of myself. I also started developing bad depression and anxiety and a bunch of the symptoms of Crohn's disease, a lot of gastro issues. It just wasn't okay. Something was wrong, you know? I also was getting really bad heart palpitations. I was having a hard time swallowing. Fun fact, I couldn't swallow pills very well back when I had my implants in, even though I used to be able to take 5 at a time. Yeah, and I was having really bad mood swings and a really hard time focusing. In fact, to this day, I'm not sure if my ADHD diagnosis is accurate or if it was a symptom of BII. I just got my implants out about a month and a half ago, so I'm still just starting to see all the changes. And I'm gonna go into that more in my next video. Yeah, that's basically my story. Got them out a month and a half ago, and I took footage during my entire explant experience, and I'm gonna put that together into a vlog. So I will post that as my next video, as well as at the end I'll be recapping how I'm feeling post-surgery and how I've been since then. So if you're interested in that, go ahead and wait for that. That should be coming in probably in about a week. And if you like this video, go ahead and like and subscribe. Leave a comment with any questions that you have, or yeah, anything that you found interesting. And just so you know, I have this video on boobs and then my next video on boobs, and after that I'm gonna be back to my queer history as well as some cannabis history and just anything I find interesting. So if you like history, weird history, queer history, drug history, then go ahead and subscribe, and I will talk to you guys later. Bye.